You guys want the lectern up there? Or no? No? Okay.
No, that's fine. Won't be that long.
You're gonna do it freestyle. You don't do chiropractic?
No.
You teach that in the Navy? You're Navy, right? Not Air
Yeah.
Force.
I don't know if you were gonna give an intro.
This is Mr. Joel Kraft of the Board of Missions. He's the chairman.
Appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you folks and exchange some ideas and thoughts. Get the first few comments out of the way. We're all familiar with Moses and his excuses before the Lord for at the burning bush, and one of them was that he couldn't talk very well. The Lord says, "Well, I'm going to give you Aaron, and let him talk for you." So, Todd is my Aaron today, and so he's gonna fill in where I leave off, and you can see how well he does preaching such a fine sermon like that with just from an outline. So he can keep his thoughts together much better than I. The next thing I wanted to make sure we're clear on is that we are on your side. We are tasked to help mission congregations do your work of spreading the gospel, and so even though we've got tough decisions to make, no matter which way they go, we are attempting to the best of our human abilities to do the Lord's will, and if that answer happens to be no, which I'm not leaning toward just right off the bat, but it's still with the best of the kingdom in mind, and so I want to make sure that you know that we're not here as opponents or somebody that you've got to contend with. The next thing I want to make sure you keep straight is that you're an autonomous congregation. The Board of Missions cannot direct what you do. We control have some effect on it based on the purse strings and those issues. But if you, I want to just make sure that that's clear in your minds, because we don't have that authority. And then finally, just for an intro, and I don't really know where I want to go with this other than kind of looking for information from you, comments, giving you a chance to express your thoughts. I will convey a little bit of some of the discussions that we've had on the board, one of which is the idea of making sure that you've looked at many options that you might have in the Atlanta area to do the work, thinking outside the box, something necessarily not associated with this property. Some of the concerns are financial, are mostly the Board of Missions works from a standpoint of assessing the congregation and kind of getting a feel for your desires to make sure, desires for what you want to have done here. And this is where my mind can sometimes drop offline and I lose my place in my train of thought, but a small group like this wanting to borrow, well, it would be a total of about $460,000 is sort of a daunting task. We are not so much concerned as the Board of Missions with that dollar amount. That's more along the trustees, but I can tell you that the fact that the property is worth considerably more than that is in your favor, because the Synod Board of Trustees is responsible for effectively investing or lending money offerings from other CLC members, and so they're responsible for that from that standpoint. With your property being worth what it is, the fact that it's secure is in your favor. It's a good thing. the amount of mortgage on that size of a loan is another matter that, from a, an ongoing basis, can you afford that? Those are the things, the issues that you need to look at. Some of the questions were answered with the budget reports and things from the meeting this morning, which is also helpful. One of the concerns was that, or thoughts that we recommend, and I will say these things so that we can say that we've said them, but I know we've talked yesterday with Pastor Gantt. One of the board members suggested that we recommend that you rent a storefront or some other facilities with a little more visibility, perhaps in town, with a grant from the U.S. exploratory line. So there would be some money available for that as a means of getting your name and face out there. Where I know you did that before in terms of your previous location, but ideas like that you make sure that you are exploring all of your options rather than just focusing in on this property and building here. We're not speaking against that, but just to look and make sure that you're looking at the bigger picture. It sounds to me like you're pretty well set on the decision, and that's why I made that comment earlier on about your being an autonomous congregation. You can make those decisions. We just want to make sure that you're looking at the broader picture and the options that might be available. One question I did have for you was that during the meeting there were steps of next step in the building process. It sounded like you had a list of steps that you had worked out, and were they written down at all, and what might be some more of the steps that need to come? Is that a formal list, or is that just sort of a way of
It depends
speaking?
on which one are you talking about. We have the general one, which is the standalone building, and if that is not met, then we're looking at building onto the parsonage.
Okay,
And that would be the step 2.
Okay.
And then the step 3, if that does not work, would be selling the property.
okay.
Is that what you're talking about, or
Well,
are you talking about the steps within?
I
building
don't, I
itself?
think it was probably the steps within the process that you're currently working with. I think that's a self-standing building. It was just on the agenda, this next step in the building process. I just wrote down steps with a question mark and what are they? And if that's,
Well, that's the overall, but for the building itself, the next step is talking to General Steel, get the
Okay, that
estimates
going
from
there.
that, then compare that to what Chuck has put together a packet for us. And then we compare those numbers to look at it and say, is this something that we believe we could do? And if it isn't, then we move on to those other steps I was telling you. If it's something that we think we can do, then we start looking at the architect, and then we start looking at, can we get the loan or not?
yeah. That would be helpful for us to know what number you come up with, because I'm thinking that the 150,000 is probably low, just based on prices and the way life is. But if that number is updated, that would be something that we would appreciate knowing. And perhaps Commissioner Ullman can help me.
To that point,
yeah, sure.
it is our intention eventually, up to this point, the way things have been going is, we come to you guys and say, hey, we've got some things that we're thinking about, would you guys even consider approving a loan for this? And then we get the response, we can't approve something you don't have before you. So what we're attempting to do is come up with something concrete and that have all those numbers, so that we have a congregational decision to move forward on this very specific detailed plan before we even come to you. That's where our,
That's where we've been led to that, for us to do that, for you to make a decision. That's what you want. And
Yes.
that is what you want.
Yeah, it's been a circular argument from our standpoint as well, and we apologize for whatever we've added to the confusion on that. But, yeah, as a firm proposal from you is probably the most helpful from our standpoint. Uh,
I was just gonna say, and when we use the term firm proposal, I don't know that a whole lot of money has to be spent on architectural, you know,
Right.
but, you know, like I heard the 150,000 figure as well, you know, and 60,000 for the shell, and that seems awful low to me. And it seems like those are kind of the things that the mission board has been hearing from the congregation, is sort of a, you know, just a ballpark number. So I think if the mission board had you know, I don't think you have to have the full signed contract proposal,
No.
architectural thing
No.
from General Steel, but at least something that says from General Steel 60,000, and then, you know, some sort of a itemized, you know, where do you come up with the rest of that 150,000? You know, just ballpark, you know, materials and things like that would be helpful.
right.
We did
Is that-
submit that when we initially went with this approach. That was 3 years ago. We did submit numbers that were concrete. I mean, we didn't just pull them out of the air. We did get them from sources.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I mean, that was well before the idea of selling the property and the pursuit for that. So we understand now that there's been more water under the bridge and the efforts that you went through in that. So, yeah, I would think that General Steel ought to be able to give you a reasonably firm number just based on the description of what you want, size and style. There will be some variations, and then if that's the way to, you know, that you're led to go, then pay the money for they'd have to do that in order to build the blooming thing, but they'll roll that number into the cost of the building. But you should be able to get a relatively firm number from them for that. And if any parking area and the road, I'm assuming that the county can give you
County
can
gave
give
me
you
those
a
numbers.
number for that. So I think those three numbers primarily would be what we would need to know. And if, I don't know how your plan is to finance the materials for inside refurbishment, you know, finishing out, those types of things. If that be like on an ongoing basis, you just do that at your expenses, that would be fine. But an explanation for that as well. But this is where you know, we'll discuss this as a board. Nathaniel always has different ideas. Todd has, Mr. Nolan's put in his experience. I will tell you that my tendency is to go along with it, to approve it. But I don't know, I don't want to give you false hope in that, because I don't know, the other board members will oftentimes bring up things that I can't think about, and I don't know whether you've got any thoughts along that line. The trustee, there's money in the CEF to do it. The trustees are looking for security, and our second, or our you know, what's it, encouragement that they lend the money, approval, and. So, I mean, I don't want to stand here and tell you, yeah, it's a sure thing, but.
You mentioned earlier that looking at other options, we've talked about other options in Atlanta, like the storefront property, but that's going right back to where we were to start with, and we really didn't make any gains. Which is, you know, the goal was to build a church, and this is our step forward to doing that.
I think also with where we were, they didn't give us the ability to put a sign out front, and we were back in a corner
Right.
with the entire building covering us from the road. If we could get like front access to the road, I think that would be a lot better than where we were.
Right, but then you also have to find a place that we can afford, rent, all that
That's-
stuff. We've
that's-
talked about it, but.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, because going back to that, if you go rent a place, like we were, right before we moved here, we were already at 1,000, our rent was going up to 1,200.
Right. And now it's at, that area is at 2,000 plus a month.
That was the less expensive.
Right,
area.
so actually adding to our mortgage is the cheaper
Just gonna shut it
alternative from our congregations, I know it's not cheaper from the risk side, but from our perspective as a congregation, what is more feasible is not renting. What is more feasible is having a smaller, a bit added to our mortgage.
And if we kept dumping $1,500 a month into somebody else's pocket,
Yeah,
we were getting
and not-
nowhere, we were building zero equity.
I don't wanna cut off the conversation, but I think, from what I recollect from the mission board discussion of all of this was, you know, the thought was not to go rent another storefront, you know, for the entire month, but I know you guys have been on this property, what, 4 or 5 years now, right? Something like that?
4.
4 years, and, so I guess you know, some of the conversation on the board is, we understand you know, you can't advertise the church. So, you can't really do outreach without that opportunity, but, you know, what are the possibilities of a hotel conference room? You know, something where you rent it on a Sunday morning where you've got a place to invite people. So, you know, instead of sitting back and waiting until the church is built, you're doing something right now to, you know, to spread the word and hopefully bring in new members. So there, you know, and I just jotted some down just off the top of my head from some of the things that I know have been done in the CLC in the past, but, there's a church up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They rent a funeral home. And I think they get it for $50 a week. And it's beautiful. You know, they've got a chapel, it's got a conference room, it's got a full kitchen, and they get it, you know, for $50 a week, $200 a month.
The first funeral home, they didn't even have to spend any money.
So yeah, so is that Eden Prairie you're talking about? Yeah, so that's a possibility. There's a hotel conference room. I just happened to ask the lady at Comfort Inn last night if they had one. They said no, but there's a Quality Inn, or La Quinta Inn, I think, about 4 miles down the road. They've got one. I'm sure they'd rent it to you. I know that other CLC schools have or CLC churches have started out in school auditoriums, public schools, municipal recreation center. You know, they've got places where you can hold a family reunion, and most of these places aren't rented out on Sunday mornings. So there, you got some negotiation power too, you know.
It's amazing how many of them are.
So I know hotel conference rooms, you know, we had a little startup congregation in Kansas City that I served for 10 plus years, and we moved around to a lot of different locations, and well, there's the group in the Houston area right now, and they're renting a hotel conference room. So they have the same spot every Sunday. They can invite people, you know, and guests, and so I think that was kind of the conversation, not so much renting another storefront, because, you know, that's $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 a month, but that's a big difference from $200 a month, or even $500 a month. Then you've got somewhere to invite people, you know, so you're doing the work of building up your congregation before you ever get that building, and I guess that was kind of one of my concerns is I, you know, just from an outsider looking in, is, you know, is the congregation so focused on that building that you know, other ideas aren't even being tossed out for now. So even if the trustees approve it and the mission board approves the loan, you know, you're probably at least a year to 2 years away from setting foot in that building and holding a worship service. You hate to let those 2 years get away from you without inviting somebody to church. And you could be doing that now if you look outside the box a little bit. So that was, I know that was part of the conversation was, you know, these 4 years have gone by with not that there hasn't been any outreach done, but if, you know, if the idea is you can't invite someone to church until you've built that church building out there, you know, that really hampers the whole evangelism thing. And I just, you know, that doesn't seem like the case. You could be inviting somebody to church if you look at some other options, so I just kind of wanted to clarify, because I think the conversation was going towards, you know, going back to what you originally had.
Yeah.
But, and, you know, you're new to Loganville, you know, it's kind of an opportunity too. You know, hey, we got a new church in town, you know, come on down, we're meeting at such and such place. Versus, yeah, we've got some property out there, we can't invite you yet, but we'd like to share the gospel with you, so.
Outside the hotel was one of those plastic corrugated stick 'em in the ground signs, you know, this is a small, for some sort of a school, can't remember the name of it, and so it's very memorable, but my point is, that it has some,
That memorable.
it was something, school.com, all it had was a website. And I didn't know whether that sort of idea had been approached, and I don't know what the rules are for sticking them out. There were a couple other signs of, you know, roofing, or we buy houses or something right next to them, at the end of that, probably in the northwest corner of that hotel. And, whether, you know, just your church name with a website, maybe a phone number, and just stick them out. I mean, they could put them on the side of the road. I can't imagine that the county would balk at that. They might, but I'd wait till they balked at it and stick something out there on the side of the road at your entrance, and elsewhere that you might have a lot where you can find other people sticking their signs as an idea. I don't know, but it's yeah.
Well, I think one of the other things that was talked about in the mission board meetings is, and this has been talked about not just with Atlanta, but I mean, this goes back for the 25 plus years I've been involved in the mission board, is there's this tendency to sort of, you know, focus in on that facility, that church building, and if we don't have that, we can't grow. Nothing's gonna happen until we have that church building. And, you know, we all want church buildings, that's clear, but you know, the congregation needs to know that that is not the answer either. And that's been proven out. You know, there's the church in Chicago. You know, they've got a beautiful little facility that they built outside of Chicago, and you know, the community's built up around it, and they're asking to go back on mission subsidy. So they got turned down.
Yeah.
But you know, they've been off mission subsidy for a number of years, and they're financially in trouble. You know, the members didn't come flocking in. St. Louis, where I was the pastor, you know, we're right in the middle of, you know, big metropolis. If you think location, we've got it. We're on a 4-lane highway with a turning lane down the middle. There's thousands of cars that go by there every day commuting to the 2 big feeder interstates. And you know, we spent, and this is why I kind of wonder if we spent over $150,000 to build a narthex and 2 bathrooms onto the front of the church, and it completely changed the whole facade of the entire church. It went from looking like a little brown barn with a cross on it to looking like a, you know, beautiful church. And we did that. We had 50 to 60 people coming to church on a Sunday, and within a couple of years, half of those who were coming to church died or moved away. And that congregation's been hovering around 25 attendance for the last 10 years now. And you know, again, we've got a beautiful location, beautiful building. I didn't have much of a pastor for quite a few years, but because it was me.
Awesome.
But you know, the growth just didn't come because of the building, and you know, there's examples of that.
Denver's another example.
Denver's another
Yeah.
one, a beautiful church building, and the growth just didn't come. So, you know, the congregation needs to think, and I know you do, but all your plans and all your hopes and aspirations for Zion Lutheran Church just can't be tied to that building. You know, it's got to be tied, and we all know this, to spreading the gospel. So whether that building gets built or not, you know, that's the work that has to get done. And so I think that was what the mission board was talking about with renting something is you know, get busy with that. Keep planning the building, but get busy with evangelism and outreach, and that may tell you a lot of things too. You know, if people start coming, you know, that's a good sign that the building's gonna be a good answer too. So
Yeah, like the hotel thing, make sure that in the area we're at, people might come or will come, and then invest the more money to expand our area.
Sure. And I think that's what the mission board, well, I know that what the mission board was talking about the MDF grant is we recognize that, you know, the congregation financially has everything it can handle right now, like pretty much all of our CLC congregations. So if the mission board is saying, get out there, rent a room, give it a try, do some outreach, do some evangelism, see what you can get going in the Loganville area, here's the grant to do it. So
Explain a little bit more about that grant.
Well, I'm sure there are criteria that we use for that, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm sure Commissioner Owen can find them. There's 10,000 that we have a line item for, comes out of the MDF, and, it's money there, it's available. Last I remember was 3 years ago, something, we issued $2,000 to somebody for something. But it's to assist for programs, advertising kinds of things, flyers or radio spots, those kinds of things that congregations may want to do and may not have the funding to do. Some, probably not all, but some of that would be available to you to use for those kinds of things here.
Yeah, so there's a, you know, the question always comes up, I guess, to the mission board, why aren't we doing more to spread the gospel in the good old United States of America? And this was one of the answers to that is, if there's congregations out there that have great ideas to spread the gospel, let the mission board know and we'll fund it if we can. And so, I don't remember when this was, it seems like it was back in 2015, 16 timeframe, this whole thing got started. But we've got a grant for them. I'm trying to pull it up here, but my computer's being stubborn. But it just basically, it's an outline. It would ask the congregation for, you know, what the project is, a little brief description of it, and then, you know, basically a budget for it. So in this case, it would be, you know, 6 months or a year of, once you find the location, if you find a hotel room or whatever, you know, if it's $50 a month or $50 a week or whatever. And kind of a bottom line that this is what we're asking for, X amount of dollars to accomplish, you know, these things. I don't know what my computer's doing, but.
I think, I don't want to say Bethel, maybe got some, or Detroit, I can't remember which, or maybe both.
Yeah, over the years, it's been, you know, there's one congregation requested, I don't remember what it was, a couple $1,000, and they got some little gift bags printed up with the name of the church and their website on it, and they subscribed to a list of people that were moving into the area of the church. And so every time somebody would move in, buy a house and move in, you know, somebody from the congregation would go knocking on the door and say, welcome to the neighborhood, we're from such and such Lutheran church and we'd like to welcome you and hope you can join us on a Sunday. And, you know, that kind of thing. So that was one deal that one congregation did. I think church signs, we helped somebody put, Batavia in the Chicago congregation, I think they got a grant for a new church sign, or to help pay for a new church sign. I can't bring it up, but basically it's just a form you fill out and request that.
I think I might have a copy of it on my computer at work.
So, but you know, it's something that Joel or Nathaniel can send once if you request.
He's the one that sent it to me.
Oh. I don't.
Go ahead.
Is
Yeah,
that-
keep talking.
You should all know I'm not on the board. I don't have a vote, so if you're gonna schmooze somebody, schmooze him. But
He has a depth of knowledge that's just awe-inspiring.
What did you think the meal was?
But you know, just from, you know, I'm technically called an advisory member of the mission board, which means I get to give advice and don't get to have any responsibility for what they do, which is perfect. But I sit in on the meetings and you know, I think my impression is the same as Joel's. I think the general consensus of the board is that, yeah, this is a good idea for the congregation to eventually build a church. But I think there was also a lot of discussion about, but you know, what have they been doing for the last 4 years to build up the congregation? And it just seems like, you know, from outsiders looking in through a few reports we get once in a while, and you know, it seems that there's been so much focus on that building, like again, all the hopes and dreams and aspirations of the congregation are hinged on that building, and we all know better than that. You know, the buildings aren't the church, it's the spreading of the word of God. So, and so I think that's, you know, am I right that the mission board, you know, I think they're hopeful that, you know, with an offer of some grant money that some of that can be taking place here as well. Not that it hasn't, but certainly, you know, the fact that you can invite people to to come here legally, I guess, certainly seems to hinder that, so maybe that's, you know, look for a different way, temporarily.
Especially in interpersonal relations, I'd say, I can't legally invite you, but we can let you know when and where we're meeting, and if you'd like to come, we can't stop you, sort of that way. I mean, I don't know whether that's circumventing the law or what, but
Well, I
it's,
just,
I mean, that's where the government interferes with
yeah,
with your religious expression that I just object to.
well, you know, it's kind of exciting too with you, when you, so, you know, I went and served down in that Houston group for, what was it, 4 weeks last fall. And they were putting me up in this little efficiency apartment, and it was, you know, I got to know the people living there, and you know, they wanna know who I was and what I was doing there, and I said, I'm a pastor, just starting a new church here in Conroe, why don't you come on Sunday, you know, and 2 of them did, you know, and it was, you know, there's that kind of a, you know, when you're kind of doing something new, people are at least interested in what you're doing, you know, and I think you could put up a, you know, little sandwich sign out on Saturday, you know, whatever hotel or a funeral home or whatever you can. So just, you know, and that's not the end of the ideas, that's just, you know, that's just the first tiptoe outside of the box. You know, I'm sure if you guys got together, they'd come up with a ton more, and probably have, but.
Any other questions or comments? That's really all I have.
Nobody's glaring and throwing things at you, I think you're okay.
Well, I mean, it's, I'm a lay my cards on the table kind of guy, so I don't know, I tend to wanna say too much as far as anticipating what the board might decide, but, I'll refrain.
Yeah, I got an off-topic
Yeah,
question.
sure.
You know, watching the news sometimes, and we're a little bit discussing up there, I don't wanna get too much, cause I thought we might talk about it down here. Sometimes I feel like the United States is like Sodom and Gomorrah. And I'm just curious, like, how is the outreach within the country going? Cause you hear a lot about overseas, but we don't hear so much in. And I'm not just talking about like Atlanta, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm just curious about everywhere. And you guys talk a little bit about it, but it doesn't sound very.
We do, Todd can put in his 2 bits if he wants, but my thought is that, well, I liken it to, Martin Luther called it the showering of the gospel, and it moves along like a summer rain shower, and it moves from place to place. It used to be in Europe, it used to be here, now it's moving into Asia. That's where things are India and Southeast Asia are growing like gangbusters over there. It's new, it's different. The United States, in my estimation, is on a downswing. I mean, you can see it in the evening news with the whole gay thing and the government wanting to provide money for people. You know, God says work is a good thing. He provides that. That's the method by which He blesses us with material things. And so, and don't get me on a soapbox either, but in my opinion, the gospel is departing. It's not gone, because we have it and we can spread it, and God's word is used wherever it's spoken. But to have and it'll have effect. It'll have an effect on individuals and things, but you're not going to see requests for 50 congregations coming in like you do in the BELC, or you know, even Monatash in Bangladesh has got new contacts all the time, folks that want to hear the gospel. They're asking for it. So, and that's just a realization. That's neither good nor bad. I mean, I'm not putting a positive or negative spin on it. That's my opinion. But the Holy Spirit has got believers in Europe yet. You're just not going to find them very prevalently, and I think that's just the reality of what we find here. The Lord has blessed our nation sort of by accident. You know, He blesses His believers. And by accident, the unbeliever next door gets blessed as well, because the sunshine and rain falls on him as well. So it's, if I'm saying something wrong, let me know, you educated men. But I would say that that's something to expect. It's yeah.
Because I heard before the pandemic that there was like a decline in Christian churches in general of attendance. So I was just curious, like, how is the CLC doing?
Well, the Catholics, the other Lutherans are all looking for pastors. They're all short. School attendance, I don't know, ILC is not, it's had more kids going there in the past. And the effects of sin upon the rest of the country can't help but affect CLC as well. So it's something we be conscious of, and get in the Word, you know, build yourself up, first of all, primarily. It's easy to get depressed and sad about how things are going, but I come back to the fact that every time I get frustrated, is the Lord's got a plan. He had a plan with Ruth, and He's got one for us. And it's the only way. I mean, I think you look around at how terrified people are of the COVID. It hasn't bothered me a bit. I mean, it is out there, but it's in the Lord's hands. And so, when people live their lives in fear, I'm just, you know, we as Christians don't have to do that. Bad things happen, but it's part of God's plan, and He knows what's coming tomorrow, and I don't. So.
I think, yeah, I mean, you can see those trends, you know, that, like you said, all the statistics show that Christianity is shrinking in the US. I mean, one thing we have going for us is the truth. We're out there, you know, preaching the truth of God's Word. I don't know statistics, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to them, but I think they tell us that the CLC is ahead of the curve because we're just maintaining, you know, we're not going down, you know, we're not going up, but so if you compare the CLC statistics to the rest of Christianity, we're actually in a better shape because we're not shrinking. You know, we're kind of, and I don't, you know, again, numbers. But you know, all that said, that doesn't mean there isn't work to do here in the United States. It just means that it's harder work to do. And I think, you know, Pastor Gantt, we were talking yesterday that, you know, the days of the sleepy congregation just, you know, continuing to go on and on because the next generation keeps it going. Those days are long gone. You know, the next generation isn't stepping in as they did in the past. And, you know, I don't, you know, and that's part of too about, you know, renting a hotel or whatever is, you know, it seems like we, you know, in the mission board, and I personally, I've thought, prayed, talked, and I don't have answers for how to do mission work in the United States. I mean, I absolutely do not. But I am convinced we need a different approach. You know, that just, you know, finding a group of Christians and building a church building and expecting it just to grow, that's not going to work. Just period. You know, it's going to take a concerted effort of, you know, members of this congregation all getting committed and behind the idea of evangelism, inviting people to church and making friends with, you know, with others and bringing them, they're bringing the Lord to them. And you know, I think we talked about this yesterday too. I think that too oftentimes, and I know I'm guilty of this, is too oftentimes I think of evangelism in terms of getting somebody to join, you know, my local congregation or the CLC, and that's a blessed byproduct, but the goal, right, is to get somebody into the kingdom of God. And if they happen to agree with us in doctrine and want to come and be fed at our local congregations, that's a bonus. But I think if we're only thinking in terms of you know, getting people to join our churches, I think we're off the mark, you know, as far as evangelism goes. And so and again, I don't want to speak for the board, but I think that was a lot of the conversation, and not just about Atlanta, but, you know, all of the CLC and each one of us individually. We've got to just look at things completely different than we ever have before. And it's hard work out there, but, you know, that's what it takes, I think, to build and maintain and for a congregation to grow is, you know, not just a budget that can support, you know, X, Y, and Z, but a congregation full of believers that have a heart for spreading the gospel. And that you can do with or without a building. You know, that doesn't take a building.
And as far as comparing it to overseas, I think Pastor Missionary Hein is planning his trip to Liberia, and they're planning a seminar there, 2 or 3 days, I think, at least one. I mean, he said it's gonna be several, maybe different places, but they're expecting 100 guys. I don't know how you communicate that with 100, so that, you know, people would, how that would be estimated, but, I mean, and all right, you know, obviously, or at least certainly there would be some that are there for other reasons, and they're not too interested in learning, but, you know, for a free meal or whatever the case, but that's the sort of interest that the word is generating over there. And,
'Cause I know, like down in Columbus, I've invited people and talked to them. They're like, 2 hours? You gotta drive 2 hours?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
yeah,
it's only 2 hours.
yeah.
But they're, oh, well, there's other Lutheran and Christian churches around here. Well, how about you check out the website? And, you know, we got a counter on there, but I don't think they're going to the website either. We have the
Actually,
technology.
we have seen a considerable uptick on the counter
Good.
in the last 5-6 months.
But I think I mean, I'm gonna sound worldly, cause it's the Holy Ghost that works in the hearts. It seems like people just, it's lazy, it's inconvenient. And I'm not speaking for or against having a building, I'm just saying in general, you know, for us. And I've had, you know, we've had other people come through Fort Benning that were also from the CLC, and it's like a 2-hour drive.
Well, see, that's part of our unique, trial/opportunity. The trial side is, we are so spread out and so distant from one another, it's hard for us to do much that is congregational. Here, let's all go get this effort here done. Besides supporting something local.
That is the hard part, cause you got,
But
Yeah,
the blessing is we're so spread out, we got an opportunity to reach a lot more people. But that doesn't mean, you know, necessarily, Seth, to your point, that they're gonna make it to our church. But,
and that's kinda, this is more like, I guess I see it as a home base, and we're covering this big area. And part of the problem is we lean on Pastor Gantt a lot, because we got like Chuck and Barb, Alan and Peggy, they got 3-hour drive. You know, we're 2 hours away, Lance is
More.
about an hour
Yeah.
away.
hour and a half,
What,
yeah.
40 minutes? You know, so everybody that does come is still at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
But we
I
wanna
even-
make it work,
I
that's,
didn't even know that. We live 25 minutes from Loveland, and that is even, you know, it's local people, unless they're really looking for something, and you've got, you know, some sort of key in with them, you know, there's something's pricked them regarding it. Nobody's gonna drive a half an hour to church just to check something out. I mean, typically, but that's hard, especially, you know,
and then I think this, in
larger distance.
personal opinion, after the pandemic has shown you can just stay home and do whatever you wanna do.
In your
Oh, yeah.
pajamas.
Yeah,
Yeah,
In your pajamas.
Yeah.
yeah.
well, those Sundays that we don't come up and we watch online, I'm in my pajamas too, so.
Barb, you said you had something?
It does, everything has changed in recent years to being online. Everybody shops online, get their groceries online. Do we have a chat room where somebody can, you come to a worship service and you're gonna hear the popular hymns and you'll hear a nice message, but you don't get the opportunity there to ask the questions, to dig into what's particularly bothering an individual. Is there somewhere where somebody can literally converse?
That is an aspect of life that you're talking to the wrong guy. I'm a low tech kind of guy.
I think
But
Pastor Gantt's got a cell phone in his pocket.
Well, actually, I was just thinking that I can put something like that on our webpage, that as soon as somebody types into a chat box, it would automatically notify my phone. So that's a good idea, Barb. I hadn't thought of something like
Yeah,
that, but that's
yeah.
a good idea.
Conversely, one of the reasons why your website is set up that we've got the comments turned off, is you don't want those trolls out there having a wherewithal to crash your site.
Oh,
So you've gotta be a little bit careful with the Christian message and just throwing open to regular conversation.
Right, it can't be,
Whereas if the trolls have gotta do something to get to where they can then spout off, it's too much trouble. So maybe we can do something with the YouTube site to forward any questions on. We can leave that kind of message.
yeah, but, and the same, you know, like if you were to go online to Home Depot and need to order something, you can go to a chat thing where the only person that sees it is you and that individual responding.
Right.
Yeah.
We can do
But
something.
it's instantaneous.
Yeah, we can do something like that.
I don't remember that ever being talked about at convention for synodical. Is that,
Well, that could become quite a, time-consuming thing for one individual.
I can imagine, but,
On that level.
yeah. I just didn't remember it being mentioned, but
You
that's.
could get a bot to do it for you,
Who?
a bot,
Yeah, well,
you know, that AI stuff.
I don't know about it,
Yeah.
so. Anyway, I'm pretty well done, other than to say, you're in our prayers, and we know that the Lord will bless whatever you do here, even if, we understand that by faith, because even if a congregation closes down, your Lord uses that as he sees it best, even though we can't necessarily see it or even like it, but we don't have to like what his plan is, we just have to accept it and know that it's the best. It's just an intellectual pursuit a lot of times.
Well,
Any other questions or comments?
just thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for
Thank
your
you for the message.
hospitality, and made me feel right at home. And I should get down here more often, but I remember most of all, or all of you, from last time we were here when we were looking to buy the property. So it's been a few years.
Yeah, Georgia doesn't have all those restrictions.
No, Georgia's is a little better in some places. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not like communist Minnesota.
Well, anything? Anybody?
Thanks for coming down, you did give us some more to think about and pray on, so,
Well, and
at least you came down to
I can
visit.
give the board feedback a lot more accurately than I would have yesterday. So it's been good for me, and I think it'll be good for you too. But so
We talked one time at one of our voters meeting about maybe trying to get some support for the outreach expenses that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Did we ever pursue that with the?
Well, what they sent us was that form for MDF
Oh, okay.
line item.
have you planned or thought? Okay, maybe you can't yet. TVBS. I'm trying VBS and having a TVBS team come down for canvassing, that type of stuff. Can you have VBS here?
We could rent a teepee or a tent and then probably do it that way.
Yeah.
It's just we've been, it's not that all of our I mean, maybe it kinda has over 4 years ended up that way for us, you know.
The only
blind
thing you've
spots
been hearing
develop.
is what, we wanna build a building, but you haven't been, maybe we've been remiss in letting you know the other stuff we had going.
I think we have probably, you know, listening to you guys, we probably developed a couple of blind spots, but it's not as though none of the things that you've talked about haven't been
Right.
tried.
In our last location, we did do the VBS, but it turned more into a summer daycare than it did, cause it didn't yield anybody coming into the church.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of kids getting dropped off.
Well, it was the same kids every year,
Hmm.
so it's not like, it would be different, I think it was new kids.
Including the local Baptist,
Yeah.
Baptist
Really?
pastors'
Oh.
kids.
Oh, no kidding.
Well,
Roger came because of that. That's how we got Roger.
Yeah.
That's how.
I don't have a problem with that myself, you know, the Baptist pastor's kids gotta hear the gospel from somebody. And I can hear from my dad.
Part of the problem with having a VBS is she's 2 hours away. They're 3 hours. Who works the VBS? Is if we don't have people that,
We'll come down.
you know, that are right here to.
Well, that's kind of, I mean, that's where the traveling VBS was kind of born out of that very thing, is there's small congregations that
We had,
don't have the resources, you know, manpower to put it on, so that's, they send the teachers and they send.
yeah, we had, Pastor Siebert was
Yeah.
in our first one. And with Carrie Oster, Chad Siebert. That was back when Pastor Johannes was here.
Oh, way back.
Way
Yes, way back.
See, I have a thought on that. You know, I like the TVBS approach. I think it can be expanded significantly. You know, that week-long daycare, 8 to 5 thing, or 8 to 1, or whatever it is. I don't think it's quite gives you the same opportunity as, you know, like a camp, where you can have those kids and it's you know, structured, but it's free, and you got 24 hours, you know, and you got 5 days of 20. It's a lot of work. That's
It's a
the
lot of
thing.
responsibility.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But you know, we did Bible camps out in the West Central,
You see, we got all that area.
and it's a lot of work. But to
I
me,
stayed in the basement of your house at Camp on Valentine one year.
I
don't
much
remember that.
more enjoyed.
Yeah, I'm not sure you were around yet.
I much more enjoyed that approach than just the regular VBS. Just I don't know. It's as a personal thing, that one's almost outlived its usefulness. You know, it's just hard because people do look at it as a free daycare. Now, it takes a little bit of commitment to say, hey, I'm gonna let you go camp here for a few days. And then it gives us more opportunity to actually share the word on a longer amount of time, even though it's a lot more work than a VBS.
You do that in South Dakota?
We did that in South Dakota.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but June, July, and August camping here is a little bit different.
Yeah.
I know, it's so much more enjoyable.
Yeah, Black Hills is a little bit better weather than.
Yeah,
And you guys,
camping in the air
you guys
conditioning.
are warped.
Hey, I've seen air conditioners on tents.
I think the thing is though, you know, it's, I mean, we can sit here for the next week and debate, you know, this outreach versus that outreach versus that.
Just do outreach.
The key is just do it, you know, pick one and go, and if it doesn't work, and man, I went through that. I mean, I can't tell you how many different things we tried in St. Louis. I mean, we estimated at one point that we probably knocked on and handed out 75,000 invitations to our congregation over 15 to 20 years, because we do it 3 or 4 times a year. Nobody ever came from those invitations that we know of. But, and I know, you know, we had a mission society, we call it. We got to and we had a little agenda, and we would just have roundtables like this. You know, what are we gonna do next? And man, there were months when I'd come to those things, I'm like, man, nothing's working. You know, and I was down. You know, I didn't want to have the meeting because it just seemed like we were banging our heads, against a wall. But after that meeting, you know, you always felt better. Like, okay, there are things that we need to do and should do, and let's get out there and try this one. And that was generally that we'd come away from those meetings with the next idea. And like I say, you know, it's frustrating, but that's exactly what Satan wants us to do, right? Well, that didn't work. Let's don't do anything. And instead, you know, just move on to the next one. And that, like you say, the key is not to debate what you're gonna do next, but do something next. You know, do something.
And the biggest thing is not all those little things. The biggest thing is just actually talking to somebody and speaking the gospel.
You're right, and I think and we had that come up too in our Mission Society meetings is you know, when when we had those meetings, and then when we went out, even without going out and putting it into practice, you know, there's just some, you know, just hearing and being with your fellow Christians, talking about it, kind of gives you courage to go do it, you know, to your next door neighbor, or the guy you meet on the bus, or whatever the case may be is, you know, you're keeping it top of mind, you know, this is what I'm here for. And it's to, you know, spread this incredible message of a home in heaven that Jesus secured for me, you know. But if, you know, but like I said, Satan wants us to focus on everything that, you know, didn't bear the fruit, and just to stop, you know, just to stop doing anything at all, because nothing works, you know. That's his tool. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I went to camp in Valentine the first year, we were still down at
The river?
the Manicadusa Park.
Yeah. You got a good memory.
That we get to sit there? All right. There'll be little ones saying, hey, Al,
Yeah.
you are, you are.
Annual meeting, yeah, that's right.
You do a great job.
Yeah.
We do see it.
Those are all mine.
Last year I went, I stayed at their parents' house.
Is that right?
We walked across through the sandbars.
Oh, yeah.
And then get over to the church in the room.
That's coming out pretty good.
Yeah, that was probably the house on Faithful, or Desiree Drive, probably. You know, that subdivision my dad built out there. He named all the streets after us 4 kids.
We walked from the house over to the church. And then for the next 15 minutes.
Picking sandwich, yeah.
Sandbars out.
Oh, man.
I can play some.
You know, there was anything in between.
No, well, when we started